What I knew is that I wanted to keep diving. It wasn't something like, okay, I got the certification and that's it, you know? Like, I just wanted to keep diving.
Off Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. Aquatic sports always came naturally to Lilia Cabrera Gallaga. Growing up in Mexico City, she would search for ways to spend her free time in the water. Naturally, she would find her way to the world of scuba diving, which brought her to Playa De Carmen, where it was love at first visit. Here, she would progress through the sport, becoming an instructor and avid cave diver. While continuing her education, she would meet Vincent Rouquette-Cathala and eventually become invited to be part of the Under the Jungle family. Please enjoy. Lily, how are you doing this morning?
Fine, enjoying one day off at the shop. You know, we can be very busy at times, right? So like the first day off, it's always like a bless, and then you wake up late and just go in a slow-mo, basically.
Okay. Well, hopefully I didn't get you up too early for the recording. Were you able to sleep in a little bit?
Yeah, it was fine. Like it's been raining these days, so like in the evenings when the rain is there, I don't want to go out, so I get to sleep very early. So yeah, it was nice.
I wanted to ask because Hurricane Beryl just came through there. So how were you able to weather the storm? Okay, did it hit pretty bad?
To be honest, actually, I think I am one of the very, very lucky people that didn't get anything. Like, for me, it was another evening with some rain, and I didn't have any problem here at home. The storm previous than the hurricane, which was Alberto, I think, I got flooded twice. It was a lot of water. But the hurricane here was like, at least here, I didn't have electricity cuts. I had internet the whole night. I was watching Netflix. And for me, it was like super, super light. I know that some people that it's mainly closer to the coast, they did have problems with electricity because with some posts of electricity just fell down and things like that. But at least here in my neighborhood, it was just like another rainy day, basically.
Okay, well that is good because I saw a few pictures and it definitely looked like it hit some places a little bit worse than others. Well, I'm glad that you were able to weather the storm and it wasn't so bad for you.
Yeah, I was very lucky. I feel very, very lucky with that.
Well, my first question I wanted to ask you is tell me how and why you became a scuba diver. Tell me about that first breath underwater, that first experience. Was it an amazing moment? Was it, I absolutely hate this? Was it, this is okay? Tell me all about it.
No, actually, it was more of a moment like I should have done this earlier. I've been always a water person. Like since a kid, every single holidays and vacations with my parents, we went to a place with water. And if we had like a trip somewhere there wasn't a pool or any sort of water form, for me it wasn't holiday. It was like meh, like I've been always a water person. And when I was a teenager, I started swimming. I was swimming in a pool very close to the school. And my parents were telling me like, hey, there is a scuba diving group on Sundays in the pool that you are training. And my parents were scuba divers like 45 years ago, right? So they were like encouraging me like, hey, why don't you go? But I was not a very good teenager at the time. So whatever my parents told me, I was like, nah, I don't want to, right? So I didn't even approach to them to ask for anything. I was happy with the swimming and that was it. Until I think it was 2005 when I was already working. I was already kind of like very boring. I used to be an accountant back in Mexico City and my life was miserable. I was feeling bored. I was feeling like life it's not amazing as people say and things like that. And one of my friends in the swimming pool told me that why don't you join us in weekends to train for scuba diving and some lifeguarding? And I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, I don't care, right? And then the group was amazing. Like, just being there with the group was really good. Was a lot of fun. We were playing a lot of games in the water and so on. And I was rocking it because I was a swimmer already. So I was like the strongest person in the group. And they were also doing some breath holding exercises and so on. And I was like the one that could hold the breath longer and could do like the strongest skills that they told me. And then once every 3 or 4 weeks, they brought the scuba gear to do the training. And then every 4 months, more or less, they will organize a trip somewhere close by in Mexico City, either a lake or a river, or also like, in the Gulf of Mexico, to do some trip for the certifications and some fun dives. So for me, it was like, not even since the beginning, I felt any kind of difficulties getting the regulators or the mask off, or like, I never really experienced anything like fear or stress of taking my mask off or things like that, right? My most difficult part was the buoyancy, of course, as a lot of people struggle with, right? But even like that, it was like not that difficult because the way they taught us was like with the games, and they had these big bottles drop down and we had to fill them up just by breath holding, by blowing through them, and we learned about buoyancy and things like that. So it was actually very exciting, and as it was a very nice group, I really enjoyed it a lot. The very, very first dive in open water, it wasn't that amazing because it was in a place where like the visibility was probably like 5 meters the most in the Gulf of Mexico. But I do remember I saw at least 2 turtles from far, maybe the shade or something like that, and and a few fish here and there. Visibility was horrible there, but I felt like super nice. Like the moment we went in, I was like, there was a little bit of current. It wasn't that bad, and I was feeling like supernatural underwater. Like I really enjoyed that a lot.
Awesome. Where in the Gulf of Mexico?
In Veracruz. Yeah, I don't remember exactly if it was somewhere in Jalapa or somewhere like that, but the state, it's Veracruz. And that's where the group actually hired a dive shop to take us all. We were like about 30 people there in the group. We were
Oh, wow.
a lot, yeah.
Was there 30 people doing their certification, or was it just like a mixed group of
No.
certified, non-certified?
Yeah, they were like the whole group. We were like 30 people, but some of us were just starting on the open water. Some of them were doing the advance. So there were like little groups that were a little bit more experienced. And even like some of them were doing already their dive masters. So like when we were training in the pool, they were like doing the general training, and then they were separating people by their levels and then doing their skills, and then by the end we were just playing some sort of aqua polo. Is that the name in English, where they have the ball?
Yeah, water polo.
Water polo.
Yeah.
But no rules. There were no rules in the water polo. So it was like very tough, and we were just like playing a lot. And then when it comes to the scuba skills, they were like separating us by groups with a dive master or one of the instructors with us and so on. So when we were doing the trips, there were also a lot of people that they were just doing their fun dives. And then the ones that we were getting certified, we will do our skills and so on. And then the rest will be divided by different groups.
So when you told your parents that you were finally doing the open water, how did they feel about that?
They were like, wow, that took a bit of time. Like they told me, like, I thought you were going to join probably like 10 years ago. Like, but yeah, they kind of knew, right? They were just like patiently waiting and like, okay, let's see when is she gonna realize that she's not in the correct place.
So when you completed your open water, or you were doing the open water sessions, did you know that you wanted to progress and do more classes, or was it just kind of like, I have my open water, I'll stick with that, see what happens? How did you start to progress through the different levels?
Honestly, I never have a plan for anything. Like I'm a cow somehow. But no, I what I knew is that I wanted to keep diving. It wasn't something like, okay, I got the certification and that's it, you know? Like I just wanted to keep diving. And the group was so nice and so really very tight, close, that they were like encouraging me, like, yeah, you keep going on and then you can do the advanced, the normal path of advanced rescue dive master. And so far for me, like my vision wasn't going into like open water instructor or something like this, right? So I said, like, well, I will just keep going training with these people. Anyway, I'm having a lot of fun during the weekends, and I'll just keep training with them, and that's it, right? It was until I kept a few months with them, and then we did a trip to Playa del Carmen, actually, for the advanced certification for me and for a lot of people, again, just fun dives and so on. And when I came to Playa and we arrived here, it was like love at first sight with this place. So I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I really don't want to leave this place. I want to stay. I want to just like to do whatever. I don't care. I want to stay. It was love at first sight with the place, with the city, with the beach, the whole environment, right? And I was fed up of the city. Like the city for me was like every day was even more difficult to get to work and to, just to deal with all the city issues we have there. So I decided to stay. I decided to stay in Playa. I didn't go back. I went back to Mexico City, but just to get some things and so on. But the day I decided to stay was like probably 2 days before the holidays finished. So I was starting just to look for a job anywhere. I didn't care, like anywhere. And so I just started sending CVs everywhere. I didn't care where. Like I was like applying for accountant in hotels. I was applying for retail shops everywhere. Like whatever. I just needed a job to make some money and be able to stay here. Luckily, I think it was the right time and the right place because the dive shop hired me to stay in the shop in the afternoons from 2 o'clock till 10 o'clock in the evenings. So it was like, that was it. Exactly the same day that I finished the holidays, they hired me. So couldn't be better, actually.
How did your job feel, the one back in Mexico City? Did you tell, were you like, I'm sorry, I'm quitting. I need to go to
Yeah.
Playa.
Yeah, my boss was a very good friend. So it wasn't the worst job I got in Mexico City because I was an accountant, but the office life was horrible. So then I quit to the office. I was in a very, very big firm of accounting. And then after that, I got a job as a manager of a gym. So it was a still office job, but it wasn't that strict. My uniform was sneakers and pants, and like I was still doing a lot of office work, and I was doing a lot of paperwork and computer and so on. But it was a little bit more flexible on the schedules and so on. And I did a very good friend with my boss. So she was like very understanding. And when I called her and I told her that, she told me like, well, it's not so nice that you do it by phone, but if this is going to make you happy, I'm completely supporting you. And like she was super nice, super, super nice. We're still in touch still nowadays, every so often.
So when you got a job at the shop, what level of diver were you at that point?
I was just advanced because it was the trip to the advanced open water. And then when I got there, of course, I was meeting all the instructors at the shop. And one of the instructors, he's a sweetheart, he told me like, well, I can give you the rescue because the owner told me like, if you want to go diving in the morning and there is a space on the boat, be my guest. I mean, you can just jump in the boat in the morning shift, because then I had to work at 2 o'clock. So I was living in the shop basically. I was diving in the morning, go to have lunch, and then come back and work, right? So the instructor actually told me, one of the instructors told me, like, I can give you the rescue and the dive master course, like basically no charge. So every time we had chance and so on, he was just like giving me all the things for the rescue and the dive master.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's awesome. So you are working at the shop now. You're in Playa. At this point, did you know that that area was a mecca for cave diving, or was it something that just kind of came about? Like, tell me about the progression into the overhead.
It came about when I was working actually in the shop, because the owner himself and another instructor, they were cave divers, and they were taking all the cavern tours basically. So I knew there were cenotes around, because all my trips with my parents when I was a kid was to all this area. We were camping a lot, on jumping in cenotes, jumping in every form of water we could find, right? But I didn't know about the cave diving world, that it's beneath our feet basically. So when I got this job, the owner of the shop told me, like, if you want to come in any of the days that I'm having 1 or 2 divers in to the cenotes, you may come. You have to pay your entrance and so on, but I was like super happy. Yeah, of course, I was joining every time I could, right? Also, they told me, like, if you want to, because we had a lot of people that were coming with their family, and then there was one diver and 3 non-divers. So they would take the diver to Dos Ojos cenote, and then my boss told me, like, you can take the family snorkeling in Dos Ojos. So I was guiding snorkeling, like super happy, like, yeah, of course I will jump in the water with them. I don't care. And I was just like doing the whole trip with them, but, swimming. So in Dos Ojos, there is a place, most of the snorkeling area, you are able to see the divers going in and out, right? Where are they going? I want to go there, right? But there is no possibility, because now I hit the wall, the ceiling there. And I was just looking, where are they going? Where are they going? And of course, I was listening to all the briefings and all these things. So that's when I said, like, that looks like super interesting. But I knew it was like miles away from my experience to ever go and do a proper full cave dive, right? But it was always like very attractive, like just to go and keep going on and see where the divers were going, and where are they coming from, and it was like super, super nice.
When did you decide to participate and move into cave diving?
Again, I never have a plan. I don't know. I never had a plan. Like, I knew I wanted to do it. I just knew, but it was like a long way from me to get there. So we're talking about, it was 2008, 2009, right? So I was still just like training to be dive master, and then maybe to become instructor, which I did in 2009 and 2008, end of 2008. I was thinking, like, well, if I want to go cave diving, I probably need a little bit more of experience, right? Because I could see, like, I was impressed how my boss, when I was looking at him, like his trim, his control underwater, it was like looking like a drone, right? Like if I was like, controlling him by joystick or some sort of remote control. And I was like, I cannot do that underwater. And then I was just like looking at him when he was diving and he was doing back kicking, and like, how the hell is he gonna do the back kick, right? So I was just looking at it, and then I was diving in the open water and doing my courses and just doing, and I was always practicing. Like nobody really taught me that. I was just like looking, and then okay, I have to try and see how he can, right? But I've been always a swimmer since I was a kid. My joy was actually being underwater, even like breath holding, and I was playing a lot. So I kind of tried to imagine how the fins should be pulling or pushing, and I was just like trying to practice. And buoyancy, 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 all I could about buoyancy. I knew I wanted to be there, but I didn't know how to get there at that time. Like I didn't have a plan. I was just like, okay, I will just practice this and we'll see later what happens, right? I did a few trips before, and then I came back to Mexico in 2014. And a friend of mine that I met since I arrived to Playa, he told me like, "Are you ready to do the cave course?" And I was like, "I don't know if I am ready," right? Plus, I had a back surgery, and I cannot just carry the twin sets. Like it's so heavy. Like I don't want to break my back again. And then he told me like, "Well, are you a side mount diver?" Like, "Yeah, I'm a side mount instructor." And then he told me like, "Well, let's make a deal. I am not the side mount diver. You give me the side mount course and I will give you the cave course. And then you just, of course, it's longer." And then he told me, "And then you just pay the difference of whatever it's worth." And I was like, "Okay, that's a good deal." And that's when I just became a cave diver. Yeah. But it was like, it wasn't planned actually. It was just like, it just came.
Oh, no, but that's amazing. That is definitely not a bad deal at all. Oh, I love that. How did you take to the training? How did you like? Because I know me, obviously, I just went through my cave training course not too long ago, and
Yeah.
there was definitely some tough moments where I was like, man, this is pretty tough. I mean, it's not. I mean, obviously, it should be a high caliber course. You're getting into the overhead environment, but how did you take to the training compared to other training that you had done before?
To be honest, it wasn't the hardest or the toughest training I got, but it was the most thorough in that sense. Because actually, I mean, I knew I wanted to do it, but I just didn't know when, how, or where, or anything like that. As I knew I wanted to do it, it can't be called training, but I was practicing a lot while I was diving and guiding my people here in Mexico or in Egypt or so. And I was always like focusing a lot, every single dive, I was focusing a lot on controlling buoyancy, on practicing kicks, on doing what I could do in an open water dive to get to be as good as all the cave divers I saw here, right? So, in terms of control and things like that, it wasn't too bad. But I think the worst part was the real management, tie offs, and all those things, right? And I also believe, and I told him about that my instructor was a little bit too laid back on me.
Okay.
I don't know if it was because we were very good friends or because I taught him the side mount first or what happened. But I told him like, "I think you were too laid back on me." And he told me like, "Well, but you have been my best student ever. Like, what can I tell you if you're doing things properly?" And like, "Well, if I do things correctly, and then you can just always tie up a little bit the lesion, just be a little bit more strict and demand more from me." But okay, like whatever, right? But certainly the most thorough course, because in the end they're not teaching you diving itself. They are basically teaching you to survive in a very hostile environment and to be aware of not only your buoyancy, your control, but the whole environment itself while you are still laying line, while you are still controlling yourself, while you're still trying to enjoy the cave, basically.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely had some trouble with line laying as well. I think the biggest thing for me was like finding that next tie off. So, and then trying to like create a nice streamlined where I wasn't zigzagging across the cave, you know? So there was definitely some challenges that I was going through. But no, I could definitely see that being quite challenging. Real quick, so you spent some time in Egypt?
Yes, it's a little bit of a long story, but I got almost 2 years around in two different jobs there. And then I came back, and then from there, since 2014, I started going only 4 to 5 months a year, just like a seasonal every year.
Oh, okay. Tell me about
Yeah.
the Egypt area. Where were you at? What was the diving like? I've heard it's very amazing.
It's amazing. I couldn't believe myself the first time I stick my head inside the Red Sea. It was like unbelievable. The diving there, it's very colorful. Very, very colorful. If you think Cozumel around here, it's amazing. Over there, it's just unbelievable. Most of the reefs start at surface. So, like you're in the boat and you can see the shape of the reef on the boat, like a huge pinnacle or like big, big, big reef shape. And then, if you're close to the coast, some or most of the reefs will drop down to a sandy area, depending where, but from 5 meters depth all the way to 20, 23 meters depth, and then just like a slope going out. If you're a little bit farther than that, then you will find drop-offs that start at surface and may have 800, 900 meters plus.
Wow.
And like it's could be like formations of hard coral, which are amazing, like really impressive, or could be just walls completely covered in soft corals of all sort of colors, and like tons and tons of fish everywhere. So it's super colorful. The visibility, it's normally as clear as it can be, like 30 meters visibility or more. During summer, it's pretty warm. So like you can be there just with a rash guard and like don't bother even with a neoprene or anything like that. It's super, super nice. Yeah.
So you were there for a good chunk of time, and then you started going for shorter amounts of time. What was it, just because you were getting, you didn't want to travel back and forth anymore?
No, it's tiring. It's tiring. Egyptian culture, we have a lot of similarities with the Mexican culture. I can find a lot of things that are very similar in terms of family importance, the importance of the meals, for example, in the food when people is having meals. Like it's we have a lot of similarities, but it's tiring, especially to be a single woman away from home. At some point I was like, if I hear a habibi more, one habibi more, I will kill someone, right? And then I had to come back. Plus, I miss the food a lot. I miss the food so much, and it was like I missed playa so much that I was like, no, I have to go back. And then when I was going, actually, I was working for a liveaboard, so I was not really on land much, but I had to deal with at least 13 Egyptians on the boat every day. No escape, right? No way to escape anywhere. So it was like, okay, I need some time just to like get rid of all these, tiredness and just like nonsense. And then, but anyway, after 6 7 months I started again like having those flashbacks of the Red Sea, which it's amazing. Like I this is another love at first sight that I got with the Red Sea especially.
So speaking of family, how long have you been a part of the Under the Jungle family, and how did you get connected over there?
I think it was 2016 when I spoke to Vincent actually. They just opened the shop. I don't know if earlier that year or 2015, end of 2015 or so. And I was actually looking to keep doing some courses because I was full cave, but I was feeling like, okay, I did the full cave in 2014, and I was thinking, okay, it's been already 2 years. I do not upgrade my training, so I want to keep going on. And then I was looking for someone to give me the stage cave. Well, actually, I was looking for stage and decompression, right? So I was looking for some instructors that I knew. They are known for being very good instructors, like very thorough, very detailed, and so on. And I spoke to 2 or 3 of them, and they might be very, very good instructors, but a little bit arrogant to my taste, a little bit on this attitude of a macho thing to my taste. And then I was looking into them when I was there and how they were teaching, and they were a little bit tough, like trying to be the tough guy with as a macho man or something like that. And I didn't quite like it. And then someone told me, like, why don't you talk to Vincent? He was working for Fosea, a French dive center around here. And they just opened a shop in Portaventuras. And probably he will be happy to tell you about the courses. And I was thinking, I think he's French, right? And they told me, yeah, he's French. Like, I'm not quite sure. But whatever. I already spoke to these other people that are super arrogant, right? So, yeah, it was funny because I love Vince. Like after that course, I just like it. He's amazing. But you know him. Like he has. Sorry, Vince, but he has this resting bitch face, right, all the time. Like I don't know, right? Sorry, Vince. And I was like, oh, okay, I will try to talk to him. And then I saw him in a cenote and I asked him, like, hey, I want to know if you're available and talk a little bit about, I want to do the stage course and decompression course and just to keep upgrading my training. And then he told me, yeah, like he was like super nice. Like, I'll give you my phone and then text me whenever in the evenings once we finish working, and then we can just talk about it. And then, yep, I texted him and then we met at some restaurant here. So he was asking me, like, why do you want to do this? What do you want to do exactly? And I was telling him, like, I just want to keep upgrading my training. I don't know what's going to be the next step. If you recommend me to do stage or deco, or what are your recommendations? And then he explained me very well, like the steps and why he doesn't want to do two courses, just one by one, get some experience, which I really liked a lot. That was it. We agreed for a couple of weeks later to start the stage course. And this was by the end of 2016. And I finished the stage course with him. Then, like a few weeks later, he asked me, like, hey, I know that you're going to Egypt every year and that you're like super happy being a freelancer, but we're looking for an instructor for the shop because it's only Natalie and me at the time. And I was like, yeah, I'm still enjoying Egypt. Like, this is the second year I go there and I still want to be there. Like, I was enjoying Egypt a lot, like those 4 or 5 months a year. And then he told me, like, well, then you can be a freelancer. You just tell us which dates you're not going to be in Mexico. The rest of the year, we can consider you as a freelancer if we have jobs or extra people that want to go diving or cavern or cave. And I was like, yeah, that sounds really nice. I really wanted, but I didn't want to leave Egypt. Like, I was still like super, super happy going there every year. So that's how I started kind of orbiting around under the jungle. Later on in the year, I did the decompression procedures course. And then actually, I was the first cavern instructor that Vincent certified. Actually, I was his first cavern instructor as an IT already. And then until 2021, after the pandemic and after I decided to stop Egypt altogether in 2019, but then the pandemic started, so we were all away from any sort of job or anything like that. And then 2021, it's when I asked Natalie, like, if you're still having a space for me, I will be very happy to join as full-time to Under the Jungle. So since then, I'm already full-time there.
Okay, so you joined up in 2021. Well, actually, just real quick. So you spoke with other instructors and then you spoke to Vince. Obviously, you were convinced after the meeting at the restaurant. What pushed you towards him to teach you? Was there any specific thing, or was it just like a good vibe you were feeling with him?
Yeah, his lack of arrogance. Because the other instructors, I know they might be very good instructors or so, but the very different thing that I felt with him is his lack of arrogance. Like, he was super open, super nice. For example, one of the instructors I spoke to, he was like, Oh yeah, you can do the course with me, but you gotta know that I am not an easy instructor, right? Like with this approach of like you're gonna suffer with me, you're gonna be like you're nothing, like something like that, right? And with him, he was like super open. He was like explaining me why not to do two courses at a time and why to get some experience before. And like, even for example, I was afraid because at that time, Natalie and Vince were Razorettes people. Like, they were all the way into Razor and, all the Razor system all together. And I told him like, well, I don't use razor. I normally won't wear a helmet, and that there are some difference here. And he was like, okay, it's okay for me. I will adapt to your style of diving. No worries. Like, he was like super open, super humble, very very nice. And that's the thing that I was like, yeah, that's what I like. You might be the best diver, the best instructor, but if you're arrogant, I'm not happy with that. I'm allergic to arrogance. Gives me rashes.
Me too. I completely agree with that. It's funny because I met Vince the first time that I went to Under the Jungle in 2022, and 2022. Man, time flies. I completely get it. Super nice guy. I first heard of Under the Jungle through a podcast, Speaking Side Mount. Natalie gave the interview with Speaking Side Mount, and I was like, man, I really want to train there. She seems like an awesome instructor, awesome person. So I met Vince, and yeah, super nice guy. And then he ended up being my full cave instructor, and I was definitely a little nervous going in. I finished my intro or cavern and intro with Aria, and then I went into the course with Vince, and he had just gotten back from they were on a trip like a couple months back, like was it Bonaire? They were in Bonaire. So like he picked me up and he was like really quiet, and I'm usually really talkative, and I'm just like, man, I don't think this guy likes me or anything. I was like, he's just really quiet. It's early in the morning. I came to find out he's not exactly a morning person. So until he gets his coffee, and then he's good to go. But no, I absolutely love the course with Vince, and I really, really hope to get to train with him more in the future. I was kind of talking to him a little bit about it before I left, because then he had left to go to his big trip that he's currently on right now. So I know for me why I chose Under the Jungle, but for anybody out there that's listening, why Under the Jungle? Why should they seek out training at Under the Jungle? And obviously I'm already convinced because that's the place that I want to go to, but someone that wants to take a cave course, like why, what can you speak about just the why Under the Jungle stands above the rest?
We are the best. Simply put. It's everything. The courses there are very detailed oriented and super thorough. The courses are not only designed for detail oriented, but they are also like very innovative. Like, it's not only repeating things that have been done before. We had a staff meeting once a week, and basically it was just like standardizing procedures, but also like Natalie and Vince were like, okay, tell me your input. Have you had any struggle with students during this skill, during that skill? What do you think about this? So we were kind of like making some gathering information. Why keep doing this skill in certain way? Or if there is like if we had some struggle that nobody had before, can we change it or modify it a little bit so it will not become a struggle for someone else in the same way? Trying to really get the best out of the experience. Like, not only because the manual says this and you have to do things like that, but like in real life, real experience, how this is good or a bad thing to do. For instance, just our checks, like every diver has to do a check of equipment matching and so on. And if you see everyone, they do everything underwater, in the water already when they're geared up. And by experience, it's that our checks have been segmented in different times during the gearing up. It is not just because that is easier or it's more complex or whatever, but because we have been forgetting things before we getting in, and then you have to take all the gear off to go and get it in the car. That example goes for every single skill. Plus the fact that we try not to do the typical from zero to hero, like, oh, you come here in 20 days and then you go and do side mount and cavern and intro and full cave in a row. Like, I totally don't believe that, right? I myself didn't get any of the training was like that, because I really think that the courses will certify to do certain thing, but it's not that you finish the course and now you are full cave diver that can do everything. Like, you have to get the experience. So the course is to teach you how to do certain things, but later on you have to keep developing that experience and keep learning from your own experience in real life dives, fun dives, and so on. So I think only 2 or 3 more shops will have the same philosophy of progressive penetration, of not doing programs that are from zero to hero and things like that. The one thing that I will repeat every single time, you won't find any sort of arrogant attitude in the shop from anyone. I feel, and even as a student, I felt it with Natalie and with Vince, that I am free to make the mistakes that anyone can make. And you won't have someone yelling at you or looking you down or anything like that. It feels very safe to do, okay, I did this mistake. They will come and tell you, okay, how to fix that. This was wrong. Now fix it and then try again, right? And for me, that's also like the best part at the end of a very complete, thorough, and detailed training.
There was a day when I was training with Vince where I was like, man, this guy is really patient, because I was definitely making some mistakes. And I was like, oh man, he's gonna lose it on me. But no, he didn't. And he was really patient and awesome instructor. And then Arya too, like, just shout out to both of them. The level of training there was just absolutely amazing. And I completely agree. It is a very welcoming place, and because everybody's gonna make mistakes, right? Like, there's nobody that's gonna come in and be absolutely perfect. So to be able to have an environment where you can make a mistake and you're not gonna get your head ripped off because you made this mistake or whatnot. I completely agree with the checklists. So you know how there's the gear check before you leave the shop, you go through all the gear checks. So I went to there was another shop, and this is completely my fault, but we get to the dive site and I can't remember what I forgot. We get to the dive site, I forgot something, and I was like, man, it's because we don't have a checklist. I'm like, where's the checklist? And I should have created. I mean, it was completely my fault, but I was like, man, that checklist is so nice. Like, because you could just look through it and be like, okay, got this, check. And that other shop was absolutely amazing. I mean, I had an amazing time. And then even with Under the Jungle too, because another thing with what you just said is the experience. So I would take a course and then I would have some time after the course to be able to dive, just like fun dive and try to gain up experience. And I would actually find things that I needed to work on that I didn't realize during the course, that I probably wouldn't have realized until I started fun diving. So it was nice to be able to, I need to work on this before going into that next course. And yeah, I had so much fun, and I'll be honest, I'm missing Mexico. I didn't even want to leave. I had so much fun down there. It was just absolutely amazing, and I'm very much looking forward to my next trip back there. So I don't know if it'll be this year, but hopefully next year. So currently, are you still taking courses for yourself, or what are you currently doing? Are you still progressing? What is your path?
Yeah, well, this year, hopefully, I will become full cave instructor. And actually, this year, it has to be within this month because I already have one full cave course scheduled for the end of the year. I've been training with Nat since last year and some days also assisting Vincent's courses. Hopefully, by the end of the summer, I'm already full cave instructor. And then again, just practicing on that. I don't know if next year, but the next one, 2025, I might be aiming for the stage cave instructor and just let's see. Again, I don't have a big plan ahead, so let's see what's coming on then.
Okay. I have two last questions for you, and I guess actually I'll yeah, two last questions for you before I let you go. So in the courses that you have taught, because you were talking about some of the challenges that you have faced teaching students and them implementing changes, what are some of the biggest challenges that you see when people come in to take a course, say like a cavern course? What are some of the biggest challenges that you see people face? And then my follow-up question I wanted to ask, and you can kind of answer these together if you want, what advice would you have for somebody that is looking to get into overhead environments, that is looking to get into overhead training?
I think in terms of technical skills, it's very variable because the technical skills in side mount and in overhead might be in a different level of performances. But I think the most difficult, or the thing that people struggle with more, is the core diving skills, which is control, basically. All these buoyancy, back kicking, helicopter kick, trim, the breathing, or what we call the chain of command. It's like most of the times people do not come with those skills under control. And it's not their fault. In certain way, I think that it's the way that instructors are teaching diving from the very beginning. And I believe a lot of instructors are still teaching diving as my parents learned to dive, where there was not a BCD, there was nothing as a BCD existing. They learned something about buoyancy, but they couldn't control anything with buoyancy. Everything was like, okay, how much weight do you need? You just add until you sink. And then how do you, yeah, that's how my parents learned, right? 45 years ago. Just keep adding weights until you sink. How do you stay at surface? You have to kick. And then how do you manage to be neutrally buoyant, between quotes? And they were like, well, you just have to use your lungs for that. And trim, like, no, there is no trim. You have to kick and use your lungs to stay at certain level, right? So, and people is still teaching like that. You come with people that they like, okay, now you have to control the buoyancy with the wing. The lungs are for very, very fine adjustments of buoyancy. And people don't do that. They still get pride on, I use my BCD as least as I can. I just use it twice in the whole dive, right? And it's like, okay, now you have to switch that. Now that's why it's called a buoyancy compensator device. And your lungs is just for very tiny adjustments. So in terms of technical skills, I think that's the thing that most people struggle with. So as an advice for that is, luckily those skills, you can practice them in every single dive, no matter which configuration you are with. So if you have the chance to go dive, focus. Before you go into the dive, make yourself a briefing and put at least 3 general objectives that you're going to focus on that single dive. You can enjoy everything else, but those 3 objectives, you're going to keep them in your mind and just keep focusing on them. So once you feel ready to go and train side mount or any overhead, you don't have to struggle with that anymore. And the other struggle that I find, it's more in a psychological way. people start to feel very stressed out the very first times that they try to keep a good buoyancy, keep a good trim, or to try to find, as you said, like what's going to be my next tie off, and then people start zigzagging the line, and then, oh, this rock just became completely flat and smooth, how can I tie off on this one? And then, like all that mental stress, it's actually destroying the rest of your diving skills everywhere. And it's actually the most difficult part to deal with as an instructor as well, because technical skills, we have tips and tricks to fix this, to fix that, to fix the buoyancy, to fix the trim, to fix kicks. But the psychological part, I wish I was a psychologist before, because it's like I feel I don't have the tools to make my student be a little bit more resilient and do not fall into that snowball of frustration and stress, right? I try to do my best. I try to feel how the student is learning, how is feeling, the stressful part, and so on. But still, there is only so much I can go into the mind of the student to control that stress and that frustration. It's just like the advice for that is, and again, you can do these on every single dive. It's just, whenever you feel frustrated, try to go back to your chain of command, which is breathing. Just breathe, relax, and try to find what's the stressor. If you follow the protocols that we give you when you're training, the protocol works. So even if you feel you're lost laying the line and you cannot find where the cave line is, follow the protocol and it will happen.
I'm the worst when it comes to the psychological part, because once it's like a seed that plants in my head and grows so fast to where as soon as it gets in there, like the doubt or the stress or something, it spirals out. So that's something that I definitely, I love that advice, because that's something that I continually work on. But Lily, I absolutely appreciate you coming onto the podcast today. This has been absolutely wonderful. I'm glad that we had a chance to record. I wish we would have recorded when I was over there, but I'm glad that we recorded after the fact, and I really, really look forward to my next trip to Mexico and just coming back to Under the Jungle. I absolutely love that place, and anytime I get a chance to visit, I'm always down to do so. Thank you very much again for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It was, this sometimes feels intimidating for me, so I'm happy we could do it at home and distance, so I don't feel that intimidated with the microphones and all those things. It feels a little bit more like, a very casual conversation. And yeah, we'll be very happy to see you again around here.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.